Let's talk about how you can fully and successfully overcome long-term or chronic insomnia or sleep problems when you're more of a thinker type person. In this video series, we're going to actually really break down the different parts of sleep struggles that you might experience in relation to being a thinker type person. And in a minute, I'll talk about what I mean by being a thinker type person. So in this video series today, we're going to start with just the foundation, really understanding whether or not you are more of a thinker type person, how your sleep struggles might actually show up differently, and we're going to start taking action steps towards how you can really improve the situation and in the long run overcome the challenges that you have with your sleep. So the videos that will be coming are going to be broken down into different parts of sleep struggles. So next week, we're going to talk about sleep onset insomnia in relation to being a thinker type. What that means is you're not able to fall asleep in an easy way, you're struggling. And in my practice, how I define that is you're struggling at least 3 out of 7 days to fall asleep under about 20 minutes. So some of my clients take way longer than that to fall asleep, even hours, but that will really help you to decide whether or not some of these videos are for you. Then the video after that is going to be about sleep maintenance insomnia. What that simply refers to is when you might fall asleep perhaps in an easy way, but you then wake up in the middle of the night and you're not able to fall asleep in an easy way. Again, we're looking at 3 out of 7 days taking longer than maybe 20 minutes to fall asleep in the middle of the night, or spending more than 30 minutes in the middle of the night being awake. Now, what this can lead to is that you're waking up several times. So you might actually able to fall asleep in a shorter time frame, but then you have 4 or 5 different wakings across your night. So if again we add that up, it's going to really lead to more than 30 minutes being awake in the middle of the night. So that's really how I want you to think about it. Then in the last part, we're going to talk about what's often referred to as terminal insomnia. Now, terminal doesn't mean that you can't overcome it. Terminal simply refers to the fact that your nighttime is shortened, so you wake up much earlier than what you're supposed to. So let's say maybe you want to get up at 6 or 7 o'clock, but you're waking up at 4 or even 5 o'clock, and you're not able to add more sleep into the nighttime. So you might have fallen asleep easily, you might have slept through the night and had a big chunk of sleep, but actually you struggle to actually add more sleep into the nighttime to really feel refreshed, recharged, and have the high quality sleep that we all want to experience at night. So this is how we're going to structure this video series. And that way you can really pick and choose which parts of sleep do you struggle with, and you can start putting in place some of the suggestions that I will make. But a word of warning: overcoming long-term insomnia and sleep problems takes time. So I'm not going to throw quick tips at you. That's not how I work with people. That's not what I believe really helps you to fully overcome the issues that you might be experiencing, but really gonna talk about more the skill set approach. So as a sleep coach, I really work with my clients to help them develop tools and techniques that are personalized and effective for them, depending on their lifestyle, depending on the extent of the sleep struggles that they're experiencing. So if you haven't heard any of my work before, then I talk about sleep skills for life. And that's very much the approach we're going to take in this video series. The main reason is because I'm seeing it every single day in my sleep coaching practice, where the old style general tips, advice, hacks don't actually seem to work for people who are more of thinker type people or have thinker type traits. So what does it mean to be more of a thinker type person? Now, naturally, there is absolutely nothing wrong with being that type of a person. Simply what it shows is you're different to maybe another type of person. So that's very much how I really started struggling with sleep. My mind was very overactive at the time when I struggled, and it became something that was causing the issues. It was causing the problems falling asleep, waking up in the middle of the night and not able to expand my sleep properly into the nighttime that it belonged. So being a thinker type can show up in different ways. And I'm not going to sort of give you an exhaustive list, but most of these will be a good example of really understanding whether or not you fit into this kind of type of person. So one of the most common thing that I see in my practice when somebody's more of a thinker type person is that you actually do work that requires your mental capacity to be high. So most of our work now is not as physically driven as it used to be. Now, there is nothing wrong with that, but it just leads to us using our mind more proactively. And that means that our mind becomes stronger. So if you, let's say, spend most of your workday in your mind, in your head, using that mental capacity, that will often lead to being more of that thinker type person. It will get your mind very strong in whether that's problem solving or strategizing or what if thinking or analyzing the past or preparing for the future. So these are some of those tendencies that you will see. And that's definitely some of the things I saw even back at the time when I struggled with insomnia too. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with these. It just means that your mind becomes very, very practiced and strong in those behaviors, those mental behaviors. So when it comes into the nighttime, your mind might not know how to actually really decrease those type of activities or behaviors in order to switch into what I would call this transition into sleep and fall asleep and sleep throughout the night. So that's really one of the good examples of what does it mean to be a thinker type. Another example is a slightly different one. So not necessarily very busy or racing mind, but just your mind occupying empty space with thoughts. Now, naturally, when we are awake and conscious, our mind's job is to create thoughts. It's to conceptualize, look at what happened, take learnings from it, and so on. But when you spend time in, let's say, a quiet environment, what can happen for thinker types is that your mind becomes almost continuously what's next thoughts coming up. So I define this, and often clients even refer to this as bubbling up of thoughts. So instead of not having any agenda on your mind, there is always something going on. And if there is quiet time or quiet space, your mind just brings up a challenge or an issue or a thing that you want to work and progress with, and it fills that space. So now these are, again, the very typical examples of being a thinker type. And what that means is that your mind simply is working a lot. It's naturally, especially if you've got a profession when you're using your mental capacity, it leads to being very strong. But the nighttime is completely the opposite. In the nighttime, your mind shouldn't be so active. And if you are seeing these tendencies show up at night, what that simply means is your mind will not understand what the difference is between the daytime activities and behaviors and the nighttime calmness, peacefulness, and relaxation, meaning much less activity. So this is really what we're gonna address in these videos, is in relation to being a thinker type, how different sleep challenges might show up and what might be better ways to approach it. Now, obviously, I always say that if you have been struggling for a long time, it's really best to seek an assessment, because there might be other things that are the foundation of the problem or the root cause of the problem. You might have an underlying medical conditions that you're not aware of. So it's always best not to self-diagnose, especially if it's been longer period of time struggling. Now, before we go into the step of how you would begin to help yourself and support yourself, I wanted to invite you to a live online class that I'll be hosting on the 10th of March. This is very much going to be about being a thinker type and how to look at putting different things in place in relation to sleep problems and insomnia if you've been struggling for a long time. Naturally, by then you'll also see these videos, so you'll have a foundation, and we're really going to get together and talk about some of the questions you might have, answer, clarify things, and really look at how you can take this to another level if the few little things that I share with you has not really helped you significantly. They might have helped you to begin the the process of overcoming your chronic or long-term insomnia, but naturally a few little things might not be enough. So we'll talk about all those different things and just really clarify some of the questions that you might have. So if you're interested in that, go ahead, click on the registration link below and join us. There will be a recording, so depending on what time zone you're in, if you're not able to make the live call, I would still suggest you register, submit your question, and we'll share the recording with you afterwards. So let's talk about what are some of the first steps that you want to take in relation to being a thinker type person and looking at how you can overcome the challenges that you have with your sleep. The very first thing is about understanding when your mind has the capacity to be calmer, not as racy, not as busy, but more closer to mental relaxation. That's how we're going to define this. We're never going to have an absence of thought or a complete emptiness of the mind, especially if you're awake, because again, that's the job of the mind, is continuously observe things and create thoughts to assess what's going on. But when you look at times when your mind is calmer and it creates an emotional calmness and a physical calmness as well, you know that that is that version of relaxation that you're capable of. And that's a great foundation to start with when you want to transfer that into having a very good quality nighttime, whether that's falling asleep, sleeping through the night, or expanding your sleep into the time frame it belongs. So when you start looking for these examples of when your mind is calmer or quieter, emotionally you're more stable or feeling good rather than excitement, and physically you're also calmer, so not fidgety and things like that, you want to look for examples that are shorter. Often clients who are more thinker types, they have this idea that in order to declutter their mind or empty their mind, they have to spend 30-45 minutes of doing something in order to achieve that. But the reality of being even a thinker type is mental relaxation exists in shorter bursts as well. But what you're not able to do is expand the time frame that relaxation exists in. So if you take falling asleep as an example, if you're not able to stay physically, emotionally, and mentally calm and relaxed for about 20 to 30 minutes, then what that usually leads to is you're going to struggle to fall asleep. If you can create that version of relaxation in 5-10 minutes, what that will mean is that you can actually fall asleep in an easy way. Without relaxation, you're not able to transition into sleep. And I talked about this in different videos before. So take examples of what some of the things you might do or engage with. I would prefer it's not involving other people, because we don't want to rely on examples that we need another person for, or some activities that are, let's say, maybe going out for a walk, because again, if you're not able to sleep well in the middle of the night, you don't want to have to go for a walk in order to create relaxation. So we're looking for examples that are simple. And the way you want to look at these is through your 5 senses. Relaxation exists through observing things through our senses. So sense of touch, sense of taste, sense of smell, sense of sight, and sense of sound. So listening to something you enjoy is going to create relaxation. Feeling something, if you're more of a touch type person, let's say your favorite jumper, is going to make you feel a certain way. If it's more sort of mental tendencies, having a hug or even using cream can actually focus your mind on what you're doing in the present rather than letting you run away with thoughts, whether that's in the past or the future. So look for those examples that are actually smaller times. Now, 2 things to actually not use as examples. One is what I would define as distraction techniques. What that means is you might do something to give your mind focus, let's say listening to something or reading something for a period of 20 minutes or something like that. And the reason we don't want to use these kind of distraction type examples is because what tends to happen for thinker types is that when you distract yourself, Your mind gets focused, it might get calm, but when you stop doing that activity, your mind very quickly returns to being very active. So that's really what you're looking for. Is if you use an example where it's really truly relaxation, you can maintain that relaxation even after you stop doing the thing that you were doing. And so for thinker types, distraction techniques don't tend to be very effective because what happens is your mind just gets very active afterwards. The other thing you want to avoid writing down as examples is when the calmness comes out of very high exhaustion or fatigue. So again, this is a very good example when people actually have 2 or 3 very difficult nights, and then maybe the 3rd or 4th night is much better quality because their mind can only be very calm if they're really, really exhausted. And so this is again very typical for thinker types in long-term or chronic and more severe insomnia cases as well. But we don't want to rely on exhaustion or fatigue in order to create great quality sleep. It's not necessary to be exhausted. Naturally, tiredness is part of it, but you don't have to be exhausted in order to achieve great quality sleep. And I'm a very good example, and many of my clients are very good examples of that, because I can really create great quality sleep without being tired at the end of my day. I have very good amounts of energy across my entire day because my mind also learned to work with me. So if you take out those examples that are either distraction techniques or exhaustion sort of things like going to the gym late at night to feel exhausted, you take those examples out, you're going to be left with the really better versions of mental relaxation. And so you want to start with that. If these things actually really help you to maintain mental relaxation, emotional relaxation, and physical relaxation all together, then you want to integrate them into your life. What that means is, instead of keeping your mind busy and giving it the next thing to do all the time and keeping it very, very occupied, you're teaching your mind to step out of that busy mode and into a version of relaxation. And when your mind knows what the difference is, it will understand how to begin to create that when you need it or when you want it. Now, naturally, this is the very first step, is to look for the examples. But it doesn't always mean that's enough to fully overcome all the layers of challenges that you have in relation to longer term or chronic insomnia situations. But it's a great start, because if you are a thinker type, knowing how your mind creates relaxation and calmness is going to be a really great foundation for you to find the more applicable advice and suggestions rather than the very general tips and advice. And you want to be looking for those. If you are a thinker type person, a lot of the general sleep tips that are physically driven are not going to be applicable for you. So this is what I wanted to cover today. Like I said, in the next video, we're specifically going to focus on not being able to fall asleep in an easy way in relation to being a thinker type. So come back and check that video out as well. And don't forget to register for the live class, when we're really going to talk about being a thinker type in relation to some of these challenges that you have. We're not going to cover the general things. We're really going to go to how different it is to be struggling with sleep problems and insomnia when your mind is so active so much of the time. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.